Good afternoon. I'm Michael Zimmerman, the Vice President for Academic Affairs and Provost at the Evergreen State College, and I'd like to welcome you to this event. I'd like to start by explaining why Les Perce isn't here today, President of the Evergreen State College. Les specifically and particularly wanted to be here and planned to be here, but he had a family emergency and was called away at the last minute. In fact, his brother passed away just recently this week, so he was unable to be here. He particularly wanted to be here because he knew Rachel personally. Rachel, as you all know, grew up in Olympia, and Rachel went to school with Les's daughters. And Les, at various times, worked with Rachel and his daughters. He, in fact, coached a basketball team with them. And it's for that reason he wanted to be here, and he thought it was so critically important for Evergreen to find a way to commemorate and memorialize Rachel and her work. Rachel is remembered in places and ways far beyond our local community for her work and her concern for peace and justice. We remember Rachel for that too, as we should. But remembering Rachel the person is the special duty of Olympia, her hometown, and Evergreen, her college. This beautiful piece of work, this amazing piece of work, is an especially appropriate way to remember Rachel. The piece, I hope you agree with me, the piece is literally and figuratively about reflection. It invites each of us to reflect on Rachel's life and death and our own place in the struggle for peace and social justice in the world. Every person who looks at this work literally should be able to see themselves in it. Every person who reflects on it will understand it and their place in the world in a unique way. That seems especially fitting for a college campus in which critical reflection and multiple points of view are welcome. On behalf of the college, I am delighted to be able to accept this piece of work from the Rachel Corrie Foundation. And I want to thank the foundation for donating this work to us. Let me say a word about our program today. I'm going to invite Rachel's mother, Cindy Corrie, to make some brief remarks. And then Anne Fischel and Therese Saliba, two faculty members, will speak briefly and introduce 4 students who will read some of Rachel's own words. And then we'll close with a few remarks from Ross Matteson, the talented artist who created this piece. Ross is an Evergreen graduate and an internationally recognized artist. Collectively, we promise to be brief, knowing that there are many standing and many people have classes still to go to tonight. So please, join me in welcoming Cindy.
Thank you, Michael. And good afternoon, and thank you to all of you for coming. The physical installation of this memorial sculpture has, of course, taken some time. And I've been on the Evergreen campus since the sculpture was positioned here, but I've avoided coming to see until this moment. I wanted to share my first encounter with the memorial in this very special place with all of you who have come to dedicate this remembrance of Rachel and her commitment to peace with justice and peace with compassion, and also to dedicate the call to awareness and action that the memorial and Rachel's story require of us. As I have pondered what to share in these few minutes, without keeping some of you standing much longer than you would want to, I keep coming back to one sensation, very real for me, that with the placing of this powerful piece, a product of so much love and commitment in this location and on the Evergreen campus, that Rachel has come home. There are many to thank. From the beginning, there were those who were determined to realize this day when Rachel would be remembered at Evergreen in a permanent way. You know who you are. Each meeting, each idea, each dollar given, each bit of time volunteered, each step that contributed to bringing us here is now and will always be remembered and greatly appreciated by our family and by all who care deeply about Rachel and her message. This event is very much an outgrowth of the spontaneous memorial at Evergreen that evolved during the first hours, days, and weeks after Rachel's killing in Gaza, March 16, 2003, and grew into a volume of writing, photos, news clippings, responses, and remembrances from students, faculty, staff, and the community. Out of that grieving, processing, and response came awareness, action, and commitment to explore and embrace the story, to not allow it to be forgotten on this campus, and have it thoughtfully impact the path of others who journey through this space. There are numerous faculty and staff who were an important part of Rachel's experience here. At the risk of overlooking someone key, I want to especially mention Anne Fischel, Lynn Nelson, Therese Saliba, Peter Bomer, Larry Mosqueda, Steve Niva, Jean Eberhardt. To all of you and to others who know you touched Rachel in some way, helped her to develop her own perspective, to questioningly, but also with some confidence, to define her own path and journey, I thank you. You were part of the experience that shaped the wonderful human being that we see reflected in Rachel's actions, her writing, and her art. I'm sorry that the sad circumstances that Michael shared with you have prevented President Les Perce from being with us today. And I very much thank you, Michael, for representing the Evergreen administration and staff with your remarks. Les has been a friend for many years. He was Rachel's 5th grade Y-team basketball coach. With me, he was a parent chaperone when our 2 daughters, Rachel and Deborah, 5th grade classes took a week-long field trip around the Olympic Peninsula and spent the night in Nia Bay as guests of the Makah tribe, sleeping on the local school gymnasium floor. I know for Les, Rachel's story is personal. It is also a story touched by controversy, not always easy to navigate. President Perce and the college helped us through the devastating time of Rachel's death in many different and personal ways. And I thank Les for his embrace of this memorial and all the Evergreen administration and staff who have helped in any way to make it a reality. And in advance, I thank those who will continue to shepherd the presence of the memorial here. It is most fitting that this sculpture finds its home in this hallway, framed by the Student Art Gallery and the Student Activities Center. Through these 10 years, Evergreen students have been moved by Rachel's story and responded, a good number by coming to intern with us at the Rachel Corrie Foundation for Peace and Justice. Others by becoming deeply involved with social justice issues about which Rachel cared, and more who do their part to learn about and address the issues that took Rachel to Gaza, some of whom will share her words later today. The spirit, creativity, openness, fearlessness, and persistence of present and former students energizes Craig and me and makes us confident that Rachel's story will always have some impact with the young. For Craig and me, our connection with students here and elsewhere is immensely comforting and encouraging, and I thank the students who are with us today. The Rachel Corrie Foundation for Peace and Justice, absent Craig and me, made the decision to lend support to the Evergreen faculty, staff, students, and alumni who were pursuing this permanent memorial. Thank you to our previous and current foundation boards of directors for their decision to support the education, the call to action, and the tribute to Rachel's legacy that this memorial artwork embodies. I recall the evening following Rachel's memorial service on the Evergreen campus when Ross Matteson came to the home of a mutual friend where we had gathered. It must have been there where I spoke to him for the first time. And I recall another occasion, sometime later, when he sat on the floor of a home where Craig and I were giving a talk. He listened carefully, asked unique questions, and shared penetrating observations of his own. We have come to know Ross and his family as friends through these 10 years. He and I have engaged each other in conversations and emails about peacemaking. For Ross, for a number of significant reasons, one being that he is an alumnus of this college. Arriving at this moment is the result of a deep commitment of his creativity, his resources, and his emotional and physical effort. I thank you, Ross, for sharing your vision and sustaining your determination, leadership, and belief in the importance of this project. Ross spent time with Rachel. She was an artist. Given more time to develop, it's hard to know the directions in which her creative energies would have gone. She loved the visual arts. Her innate sense of what they could accomplish is recognized in the commitment the Rachel Corrie Foundation makes to using art and the written word as tools for pursuing justice and peace. Art enlarges our spirits, expands our vision, and heightens our sense of all the creative possibilities. Rachel was given to imagination. We and her family talked about her rich inner life and how remarkable it was when the fragments of that inner life emerged for us to consider and enjoy. I believe that the artwork and the memorial created here by the contributions of so many people challenge us to let our imaginations soar like the dove, seeking all the possibilities for creating peace with justice. The pyramid invites us to look deep into our own souls and to ask, who will I be? What will I do? Those were Rachel's questions. Thankfully, the peace will be here today, tomorrow, next week, next year, a place for self-reflection. It is easy to talk about peace and much more difficult to substantively and thoughtfully do something about creating it. Rachel challenges us to continue to be learners, to be the kind of thoughtful activist she was becoming, to be willing to look clearly for the injustices and to expose them, and to be ready to resist, but to make ours a loving resistance. Rachel was in Gaza partly to challenge the Caterpillar bulldozers and the Israeli military using them to destroy the dwellings of thousands of Palestinians, violating the basic human right of people to be safe in their homes. But she was also there living and working with children, women, and families, striving to share with us some of their experience. A saddened Evergreen professor, Larry Mosqueda, said in a March 17, 2003 NPR interview that he admired the courage of Rachel's convictions. He said she wasn't naive at all. Basically, she was a very smart person and very dedicated to peace and justice issues. Somebody who wanted to do something about the problems in the world and not just learn about them. In 2005, Khalid Nasrallah, one of the two brothers in the house whose families Rachel stood to protect, visited the Evergreen campus when he, his wife, and baby spent weeks traveling with Craig and me to share their story in the US. This genuine and peaceful man, Khalid, stood on Red Square, peered around, and quietly smiled. He looked at the beauty of this place and he said, "She left paradise to come be with us in Gaza." She left paradise to come be with us in Gaza. Today, Rachel has come home to Evergreen, this place so central to her life and values. Through this elegant memorial, she returns, reminding each of us that we too should sometimes step out of paradise, make some sacrifice, be willing to face some hardship, discomfort, criticism, and even risk to challenge the injustice that we see. Rachel propelled our family to this place, and doing so gave us the gift of opportunity. There are amazing possibilities that exist for each of us when we make the effort. To all of you who have kept Rachel's story near, who have lent support in so many ways, and who have believed that in her story are lessons for all of us, thank you. May Rachel's spirit soar here at Evergreen and take many along for the ride. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm Teresa Saliba. This is Ann Fischel. We're faculty at Evergreen. I was very fortunate to meet Rachel before she left for Palestine, but I was really struck by the beauty of her writing when I received her first emails from Gaza. And those emails opened up, they were so powerful, they opened up my heart and mind in a new way to what was going on there. I had been there over a decade before Rachel went, and I had seen the demolished homes, and I had seen a family of 15 living in the rubble of their demolished home. And the father said to me, "Lots of people come here and take pictures, but nothing ever changes." And Rachel was really determined to change things through her nonviolent actions, through developing a sister city relationship with the people in Rafah, and through her very eloquent writing. And she had a large impact on the people over there. She also had this amazing ability in her writing to put herself in the shoes of other people, whether she was writing about Palestinian children and the fact that they had not had the experience of living in a home that didn't have bullet holes, or she would put herself in the shoes of the young armed border guards, military at the border. So reading Rachel's emails from Gaza really reopened my consciousness about the situation there, and I often carry her words around in my head and sort of use them as both a challenge and an inspiration. One passage that she wrote was, "This has to stop. I think it's a good idea for all of us to drop everything and to devote our lives to making this stop. I don't think it's an extremist thing to do anymore. I still really want to dance around to Pat Benatar and have boyfriends and make comics for my coworkers, but I really want this to stop." I think this is a very human reaction to the normalization of violence that goes on there, but to any kinds of injustices that we see in the world. And the day Rachel was killed, several of her friends gathered at my home, many of them in shock and deep grief. And they put together a banner that read, "Rachel, your courage, your spirit of resistance, and your joy for life will inspire us always to stand for peace and justice." And this is the example that Rachel left us with, and the opportunity for us to reflect on our role in creating peace and justice in the world. Thanks.
So I wanted to start really by thanking everyone who participated in bringing this beautiful piece here, which welcomes Rachel home, as Cindy said. And I especially wanted to acknowledge Therese because she has been passionately, persistently devoted to this effort for a long time and really carried it in ways that I as her colleague, am deeply grateful for. So thank you. I knew Rachel when I met her when she became a student in a program that I co-taught with Lynn Nelson, who Cindy also mentioned, called Local Knowledge, from fall 2001 to June 2002. And she then honored me by asking me to support her individual learning contract in the fall of 2002 before she went to Gaza. So I knew Rachel as a student, as a learner, as the talented visual artist that she was, as an extraordinary writer, as a community activist, as someone who was really developing a sense of her work in the world, and it was a great privilege to work with her. Rachel was a multifaceted person with a lot of interests, and I don't know how many of you have read the collection of her writings called Let Me Stand Alone, but I was looking through it again last night for inspiration for this talk, and I discovered a list that she had written when she must have been about 11 years old, in which she speculated about her possible careers, her possible futures, among which she listed becoming an attorney, a poet, a pet store owner, an environmental and humanitarian activist, and the first female president of the United States. And she was perfectly capable of doing any and all of those things. So for young people who are students, the form that their life may take is something that can change and is not something that a teacher can or should predict. Students' sense of what their work is going to look like in the world often changes form. But there are continuities of interest and focus that over time cohere into a solid sense of work and purpose. And so when I think about Rachel and I ask myself the question, what were those constancies and commonalities that emerged so clearly in that writing over time, or that I saw in that year and a half that I worked with her, or in the emails that she sent back from Gaza? This is what I come up with. The continuities I observed in Rachel sprang from her strong sense of justice and compassion, her choice to focus on communities and constituencies that are often ignored and silenced, her respect for the knowledge and skills that ordinary people bring to their lives, the ways in which people care for one another and maintain values and culture even in the most repressive conditions, her focus on people's history and memory, the histories and memories that often don't get into our official histories of a place or period, and her search for skills, forms of knowledge, strategies, and perspectives that would enable her to engage with people, to join in and participate in their lives and struggles, to be connected, above all, to be connected, whether we're talking about people who live down the street or halfway around the world. These are qualities that so many people have loved and recognized and valued in Rachel. When I was in Venezuela with students, I was invited to go to a community radio station. And we were there initially observing before we met with the producers. And I realized that the show that they were producing in Spanish was about Rachel, because they had learned about her life and they wanted their community to know about this young woman so passionate and so committed to peace and justice, and about her struggle and about her work. A lot of students have come to the college because this was Rachel's school, right? And I see a lot of people here in this audience of many generations who recognized in Rachel a kindred spirit, a common sense of work and purpose that has supported and inspired your own very important community work, wherever and however that's taking place. So in the spirit of acknowledging what Rachel has meant to so many people, I actually wanted to read what members of her local knowledge learning community in March 2003 wrote and read at her memorial. This is just a short excerpt, but they're words that have stayed with me because they so much spoke to the sense of shared purpose that these young people had with Rachel and that I think so many people feel. Learn and speak. Turn to each other and organize right where your community needs it most. This is how to honor the humility of her death, not with banners and slogans, but with strength, intelligence, and critical compassion. She was extraordinary and ordinary. She cared about the world and threw herself into it. She was one of us.
We're now going to hear from a number of students who've been personally touched by Rachel's story. And we're going to start with Elissa Goss, and then Zaid Wada, and Elizabeth Moore, and Christina Erickson. Elissa.
Wow, it's really amazing to see so many people here and know that each of you have been touched in some way by Rachel Corrie and also by the people you've probably met if you didn't know her. I didn't know her when she was alive. So it's through her writing and people that have lived on an example that I was touched. And I'm an alum of the college, and this time last year was in the West Bank, in parts of Israel, with the Corrie family and Elizabeth and fellow student Maya Harris on a delegation to learn more. And part of what Rachel Corrie inspired me with is that is the fact that she always searched for justice. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and one of our principles is justice, equity, and compassion in all human relations. It doesn't say neutrality, equity, and compassion in all human relations, and I think Rachel Corrie really stood up for that, stood up for the fact that it's about justice, not living in neutrality, which is very easy as a U.S. citizen to be neutral. And something else that she really spoke to, especially in her earlier writing, is by being a U.S. citizen, it can be very easy to get on a high horse and have an opinion about that issue that's happening over there. And let me tell you, okay, let's turn around, let's talk about something else. Instead of really critically reflecting on what it means to be a U.S. citizen right here, here on Nisqually and Squaxin land. And she wrote about that a lot, about being on occupied land and that her responsibility in her community right here, not just her responsibility as U.S. citizen in funding the occupation of Palestine. And so I have a few excerpts from some of her writing in when she was a student in local knowledge in her Self in Context essay that talks a little bit about her views on being from here. Almost everyone I know and have known in Olympia came from somewhere else. There's a lot of new growth here. Very few people's grandmothers lived here. I'm a local only in the sense of people could be born anywhere. Nobody in my family needed the water, timber, fish, or for that matter, the brewery. This area is known for its endangered species, for its water, for its beer. You can live here for years, passing Northwest coastal art on street corners and sending your relatives smoked salmon on the holidays. You can live here for years and believe you understand and not yet understand what it is you are living in. This is the difference between knowledge and trivia, between trivia and history. Facts can be arranged in a way that invites participation, or they can be dispersed loosely and without correlation. Maybe all places are this way, and everyone is startled when, trudging through a tedious history, they stumble upon a massacre just a little to the south. Internment camps on the islands, genocide stretched wide and sore across everything. We're startled to discover that the places where we live are important. This area is contested and chock full of progressive white people who moved here from somewhere else. We can believe somehow that we gave birth to this place, that we have some measure of responsibility for its beauty, and it's somehow a testament to our own ingenuity that we wound up here. We can exist here a very long time without noticing that our location is dynamic, settled in the midst of a continuum of a brutal history. Drawing links between historic repression, racism, propaganda campaigns, xenophobia to our present situation has been very empowering for me. It took 2 quarters before I really felt ready to immerse myself in community work. The brutal history drives home the importance of resistance, and it makes national and international events relevant on a local level. So much of this has happened before. We can look at that history and then choose which side we want to be on now and how we're willing to fight. In a lot of ways, the Pacific Northwest is a place that has been continuously colonized, first by white people, then waves of more affluent white people. Lands begin to shrink. There's less and less access to water. Histories get buried in sediment because we feel attached to this place and we want to believe that it's ours. It's important to search for what was here before and to remember the racism, class repression, and genocide. This process has been happening for me off and on for a while, but I searched with more intensity this year. I spent an insane degree of time with Shelton's Boom. My seminar thought I was crazy. But I was able to step outside of packaged history and form my own conclusions by comparing various texts. This was an empowering experience for me, the sense that something new could be accomplished with history, the sense of something dynamic. I need to take more risks with people in the future. I think in order to get support, it's good to know that I can work with people for a long time and let them know what I'm up to without anything terrible happening. I'm not sure how the work I did will look. I learned a lot about what to do when you aren't at work, how to engage in civic discourse, how to create civic space, how to be in community. And once you know that there are salmon down there, it's hard to forget. You imagine their moony eyes while you walk home from the bar in your slutty boots. You're aware of them down where you ride around in someone's car, fanning their gills. It's hard to be extraordinarily when you always have the salmon in the back of your mind in that pipe down there on their way to daylight at Watershed Park. Salmon are the history that isn't trivia, the history that is now. They are what was here before. At times I've been so angry at this place. I've been ashamed by this place. I've suffocated in it. I look at this place now with no overwhelming desire to escape, no disassociation into factoids and trivia, no agoraphobia, certainly no bored invention of mythologies to pass the time. I look at this place now, and I just want to do right by it. The salmon beneath downtown and the people who come to do drop-ins and the creeks and the inlets and the people who were here first and my elementary school teachers and my mom. That was Rachel.
Hi guys, my name is Zaid, and it's not tall enough. I'm thank you. I'm a half Palestinian. My father was Palestinian, and my family in 1948, like many other Palestinian families, were evacuated from their homes. And I just want us today to be reminded how Rachel was a courageous human rights defender and how she is a model of compassion for us all. She was deeply moved by the people of Palestine and horrified by the tactics of the Israeli occupation. She bravely stood up for her convictions in a way few of us can. I wanted to keep that short, and now I just want to read this short Arabic poem. I don't know who the author is. Heard it in a cafe. I thought it was nice. And I feel this poem encompasses the Palestinian struggle that she was fighting for. And I'll translate it afterwards. The translation loses a bit of its strength, but it's still good. اللي يمضيع وطنه لا sorry اللي يمضيع الذهب بسوق الذهب يلقاه واللي يمضيع حبيبه يمكن سنة وينساه بس اللي يمضيع وطن وين الوطن يلقاه. And this translates to the one who loses gold in a marketplace, he can find it again. And the one who loses their love, in a year, they may forget it. But the one who loses their homeland, where can another homeland be found? And that's it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm a senior this year, and actually exactly a year ago today, I left Paradise along with 3 other of the lovely folk here to travel to the West Bank and to see what Rachel saw. And the piece I'm going to read has inspired me time and time again. It's actually in the book as well as a piece of the play, and it's what I first read and first found most inspiring, as I knew one day I would but choose to go to Palestine and then choose to leave, unlike many who are there can do. So I'm going to read this piece by Rachel. And following that, I'm going to read a reflection I wrote on my last night in Palestine before I traveled back to the States. So, nothing could have prepared me for the reality of the situation here. You just can't imagine it unless you see it. And even then, your experience is not the reality. What with the difficulties the Israeli army would face if they shot an unarmed US citizen, the fact that I have money to buy water when the army destroys the wells, and of course, the fact that I have the option of leaving. I'm allowed to see the ocean. If I feel outraged at entering briefly into the world in which these children exist, I wonder how it would be for them to arrive in my world. Once you have seen the ocean and lived in a silent place where water is taken for granted and not stolen in the night by bulldozers. Spend an evening when you didn't wonder if the walls of your home might suddenly fall inward, when you aren't surrounded by towers, tanks, and now a giant metal wall. I wonder if you can forgive the world for all the years spent existing, just existing, in resistance to the constant attempt to erase you from your home. This is something I would know about these children. I wonder what would happen if they really knew. Coming to Palestine, knowing what I thought I knew, what I thought was a lot about the situations, from testimonies I had read, pictures I had seen, panels I had been to, did not suffice. Rachel Corrie was right. Nothing could have prepared me for the reality of the situation here. You just can't imagine it unless you see it. It took tear gas burning in my nostrils and making my eyes leak. It took seeing wounds and sensing internalized ones, and goosebumps from touching scars. It took sleepless nights for fear of soldier roundups and break-ins. It took achy muscles from fleeing hillsides littered with rubber bullets. It took witnessing the uncontrollable pain of losing a loved one. It took feeling the frustration of settler taunting. It took being degraded by soldiers as they strip-search your belongings and your body for weapons. It took uncontrollable shakes and tears. It took burning my tongue on never-ending cups of ahwa and chai. It took sleeping next to strangers who became best friends. It took raw hands from cold bucket showers and hand-washing dirty clothes. It took awkward silences from language barrier mishaps. It took the early mornings of walking children to school. It took tasting the freshest olive oil from olives you picked yourself. And it took feeling a part of something bigger than myself. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. It's good to see you all here. My name is Christina. I'm a member of Students for Justice in Palestine. I'm going to close tonight by reading a poem by the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish. I selected this piece because I feel that it is a good reminder for all of us to persevere, hold on to our dreams, and never be afraid to walk outside of the popular imagination. So this one's for Rachel. Now As You Awaken by Mahmoud Darwish. Now as you awaken, remember the swan's last dance. Did you dance with young angels while you were dreaming? Did the butterfly light you up when it burned with the eternal light of the rose? Did the phoenix appear clearly before you and call you by your name? Did you see the morning dawn from the fingers of the one you love? Did you touch the dream with your hand? Or did you leave it to dream alone, aware suddenly of your absence? Dreamers don't abandon their dreams. They flare and continue the life they have in a dream. Tell me how you lived your dream in a certain place, and I'll tell you who you are. And now, as you awaken, remember if you have wronged your dream, and if you have, then remember the last dance of the swan. Thank you.
We're also going to close the ceremony by hearing from the artist, Ross Matteson. And before we do that, I just also want to thank John Carmichael, who's Les's assistant and really helped facilitate this in happening. So thanks to John. And Ross, artist Ross Matteson.
I'm reluctant to personalize either good or evil. So I find it helpful to think about this tribute titled Reflecting on Peace and Justice from two different perspectives. One is with respect to Rachel as a very special but very human fellow student. The other is with a focus on the high ideals that Rachel and her family have made a commitment to both understand and demonstrate in their lives. Ideals that I feel are, believe are widely cherished in the Evergreen State College community. Peace and justice for all are examples of these ideals. I think that the power of these ideas does not come from a person, but from the ideas themselves. If anyone has any doubt about that, just think for a minute. Rachel is not here, but the principle of love and intelligence that she sought after has brought us all together. Is there anything threatening about reflecting on peace and justice, as this tribute encourages us to do? Can the idea that Rachel's example of this reflecting, this thinking, observing the world around us, this process of asking good questions based on a love of humanity and the natural world, this active thinking process with a fearless expectation for solutions, this desire to take responsibility for even small steps of progress, this willingness to share what we are learning, be considered anything but a blessing to this state college. As a 10-year-old, I was Rachel. As a 23-year-old, I easily could have been her as well. And I don't think that I'm alone. Am I alone? I encourage everyone who hasn't to see the YouTube video of Rachel giving her famous 5th grade speech against child hunger in the world. In essence, she said, if we ignore world hunger, not only will 40,000 people a day continue to die, but inspiration itself will die. The light of compassion will be extinguished in our thought. Many years later, while a student at Evergreen, Rachel interviewed me because I am a community activist and an international artist. What I saw in Rachel at that time was a thoughtful, quiet person. She still had that timeless light of compassion flickering in her eyes, but it didn't hint of idealism to me. Her questions weren't just academic, they were tactical. She was seeking out practical inspiration to fight injustice. She was motivated and willing to do something meaningful against all odds. She was certainly an artist. The polished stainless steel of reflecting on peace and justice reflects our own image back at us for a reason, because we are all responsible for peace and justice. To get a better look at the dove, we need to walk up to the sculpture and see our reflection. As we fight for a world with less conflict, we need to guard the quality of our own thought. This will help wake up the quality of local, national, and international thought, and it is worth doing. Evergreen's value is tied to the courage of expressing sometimes controversial ideas without fear. I'm deeply grateful that our community has risen up to see this tribute realized. There are many contributors to the design and presentation of this sculpture. It was never primary in my mind that I should be referred to as the artist for this focal point. But for the last 10 years, it has been imperative to me that a gathering place and tribute be made by someone for Evergreen in Rachel's name. May this sculpture and place be one that brings us together and invites the citizens of Washington and beyond to respectfully reflect on improving the most challenging of conflicts. Thank you.
I'd like to bring this amazingly moving event to a close by doing two things. First, I want to reprise something Cindy said. What Cindy said is, we have an opportunity to remember Rachel by looking at this beautiful sculpture today and tomorrow and next year and for all years to come. Evergreen is incredibly lucky to have that opportunity, to share that opportunity with all of our students and our community members and all of our visitors. And for that, again, I want to thank the Rachel Corrie Foundation for Peace and Justice. I want to thank Ross. I want to thank Cindy and Craig for the amazing work that they have done. I also want to reprise what others have said and thank, on behalf of the institution, a number of people who have done amazing work to make this day, this event, this memorial possible. I hope you recognize I'm only thanking a small number of people. It's a mistake to thank people by name because you're not going to acknowledge everybody, but I'm going to do that anyway because these people deserve a special thanks. There are others, but let me just right now thank faculty and staff who really played a central role over an extended period of time. You've seen many of them today. Therese Saliba. You were over there a second ago. Therese Saliba. And Anne Fischel. Larry Mosqueda. Tom Mercado. Greg Porter, Mike Drennan, and John Carmichael.